and docile creature, mentally docile creature, who will virtually do whatever he's told, especially if there's a little payday at the end.
The number one means of taking control of somebody is by controlling their mind and what they think what they think is correct or not. It's psychological warfare.
Oh, these are the different ways that people make people do things they don't want to do, other than giving them money.
Every year, New York held an Easter Day parade to which thousands came. And Bernays decided to stage an event there. He persuaded a group of rich debutantes to hide cigarettes under their clothes. Then they should join the parade, and at a given signal from him, they were to light up the cigarettes dramatically. Bernays then informed the press that he had heard that a group of suffragettes were preparing to protest by lighting up what they called torches of freedom.
He knew this would be an outcry, and he knew that all of the photographers would be there to capture this moment. And so he was ready with a phrase, which was torches of freedom. And so here you have a symbol, women, young women, debutantes, smoking a cigarette in public with a phrase that means anybody who believes in this kind of equality pretty much has to support them in the ensuing debate about this, because torches of freedom. I mean, what's on all American coins? It's liberty. She's holding up the torch. And so the next day, this was not just in all of the New York, it was across the United States and around the world. And from that point forward, the sale of cigarettes to women began to rise. He had made them socially acceptable with a single symbolic act.
What Bernays had created was the idea that if a woman smoked, it made her more powerful and independent, an idea that still persists today.
Bernays made it socially acceptable for women to smoke cigarettes, and similar techniques of co-opted messaging and relabeling of things in order to create progress has become only more intense in the last few decades as the push for globalization and further centralization of governing power has increased.
But clearly, it is the intelligent minorities which need to make use of propaganda continuously and systematically. Small groups of persons can and do make the rest of us think what they please about a given subject.
Basically, I mean, first off, it's fundamental. TV is a mind-controlled device that runs at 60 megahertz, the same frequency as your mind receives patterning. It's continuously been used as a device to inject information to novice minds or people who have no discernment in the information they take in. So basically, if you're not making a conscious decision on the information you're taking in, you're just storing everything. Are you storing it all as truth? Like, how are you disseminating what you just saw in the commercial and what you saw in the news? People don't, and that's why commercials work. And that's why they spend billions of dollars a year, because showing you something that's false right next to something that you just took to be true. Oh, I like Wendy's hamburgers. Okay, I want to, it makes you want to, next time you drive by, you remember that commercial and you go in there. So they have made their money. Capitalism is basically, it works off of a contrived shortage. And the people who contrive the shortage are the people who know how best to work the system against everyone else and make a profit, right? And charge interest and fractional reserve lending and all these little schemes that they've used to basically infiltrate us and drain us of every piece of worth and then bury us and then charge us for that, right?
What the corporations realized they had to do was transform the way the majority of Americans thought about products. One leading Wall Street banker, Paul Verge of Lehman Brothers, was clear about what was necessary. We must shift America, he wrote, from a needs to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things even before the old have been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality in America. Man's desires must overshadow his needs.
Thanks to a takeover of the printing industry and creation of the education industry, small elite super wealthy groups of people have been able to hide their darker connections and pasts of exploitation and misery by sugarcoating their images in textbooks that are taught as official history.
And I'd say, what's your name? He'd say, Al Jolson. I'd say, Mr. President, Al Jolson. Next day, every newspaper in the United States had a front page story. President Coolidge entertains actors at White House. And the Times had a headline which said, President nearly laughed.
You don't really realize what's being done to you. And in that way, I think that the corporate media molests and accosts the unknowing people who sit there and take it in for reality, because it's scripted. You don't know who's writing these scripts, and if you look and see where the intelligence people are mingling in with the media, and if you go back and trace it, you have J.P. Morgan talking about how they, he bought off the heads of all the media back in the early 1900s.
And so that there's this real openness to Bernays' techniques being used to sell products to the masses.
Beginning in the early 20s, the New York banks funded the creation of chains of department stores across America. They were to be the outlets for the mass-produced goods, and Bernays' job was to produce the new type of customer. Bernays began to create many of the techniques of mass consumer persuasion that we now live with. He was employed by William Randolph Hearst to promote his new women's magazines, and Bernays glamorized them by placing articles and advertisements that linked products made by others of his clients to famous film stars like Clara Bow, who was also his client. Bernays also began the practice of product placement in the movies, and he dressed the stars at the film's premieres with clothes and jewelry from other firms he represented. He was, he claimed, the first person to tell car companies they could sell cars as symbols of male sexuality. He employed psychologists to issue reports that said products were good for you, and then pretended they were independent studies. He organized fashion shows in the department stores and paid celebrities to repeat the new and essential message: you bought things not just for need, but to express your inner sense of yourself to others.
The public basically has their opinions formed by consensus, polls, things like this that are used to steer populations.
It is often said that half of writing history consists of the winners hiding their own atrocities. The largest problem lies in the control of information. If the people in charge of dispensing information become corrupted to an organized elite bent on domination, then we no longer have a trusted source investigating the true agendas of our leaders. Let's talk politics. You may have already considered that politics is a game of deception, maneuvering oneself into having as much control as possible, while at the same time maintaining the squeakiest public image. As countless scandals have indicated, Lord Acton was right. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So let's talk power. If there are those who truly wanted to rule the world, do you think it would be wise of them to put themselves as the true rulers in the public eye? Or do you think it would be safer and wiser for them to guard their privacy in obscurity, with layer after layer of easily controlled political leaders? With a series of middlemen acting as public figures to create a buffer of control and create a false dichotomy of choices, whereby you can choose Republican or Democrat, liberal or conservative, you still have to stay within a two-party system of right versus left. It's like being thirsty and given a choice of only Coke or Pepsi. What is the difference when I only want a glass of water? It's simple. It creates divisions and diversions to protect rulers in the shadows of secrecy, away from the awareness of the people who might challenge their power.
Well, if you study history a couple hundred years ago, and you find these parties went through an evolution, and at one point Democrats and Republicans were in the same party. But where did our choice go? Where did our choice go? Well, that's the whole thing. They don't give us choice. They give you this hand or this hand, but you're getting to the same body and the same educational structure. And people were like, well, this control structure has existed for thousands of years, and you just found out about it, so how are we going to do it? Well, the fact that we just found out about it, I think, is a big step. Because once, people find out and that information propagates, even if they try to bury it again, in 500 years, somebody might uncover some archive and it has all this information. It totally changes that, you know, the whole dynamic of where things go.